Welcome back to the Fighters Corner podcast for another podcast episode. In today's episode, it was an interesting one as we bring up Jeffrey Epstein's driver and Soviet Special Forces soldier Igor Zinoviev. Okay, why Igor? I thought this was a combat sports podcast, right? Well, it turns out that this guy fought in the UFC back in the early days, and he fought against Frank Shamrock. Not a lot is known about Zinoviev, but Miguel Iturrate was able to chime in and shed light for us on him and also Mob Ties MMA. Wait a second, there's no such thing as the mob, right? So who are you taking in this weekend's fights? I know who I got, and it's not who you think, so I'm going to take my picks over to the world's safest and most trusted online gambling site and make a few bets. That's right, it's BetDSI.com. With more than 20 years' experience in the online gaming industry, BetDSI has the best sign-up and deposit promotions on the web. They also boast more deposit options than any other betting site, including fast, free, and secure payouts. Also, for our listeners, they are offering a special promotion where you can build a bigger bankroll and get 100% sports cash bonus when using our promo code Fighters Corner, all one word. That's 50% more sports cash by using our promo code Fighters Corner. Check out BetDSI for all your online gaming needs. This episode is sponsored by B2 Digital. B2 Digital is doing some really cool things in the mixed martial art world. They're kind of creating a farm league for the bigger shows, and they are listed on a publicly traded company, listed on the stock exchange, BTDG on the stock exchange. They support our show. Guys, please, if you guys like this show, please give them a look, and if you can throw some support their way, man, it'd be greatly appreciated. Also, please don't forget to subscribe, hit like, share, all because you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Radio Player, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio, and the guy sitting next to you on the train is probably listening to us too. And if you can, show us your support by finding us on Patreon, where you can let us know how much you love us. And if you're a fan of boxing, jiu-jitsu, kumite, and even capoeira, go check out my guys at UCL MMA. These guys are the heavyweight champions of mixed martial arts shows. And if you think you're the next Johnny Lawrence, go to their website at uclmma.com, shoot them an email and tell them John sent you before asking their matchmaker that you want to defend your All-Valley Karate Championship versus one of their fighters. That's uclmma.com. Welcome back to the Fighters Corner podcast. Miguel Iturrate. Guess who we have sitting in front of me? John Goroski.
Yay.
Incredible, John. So today, Miguel, what do you want to talk about? Is there anything been in the news that has piqued your interest or made your ears perk a little bit?
Well, it is an MMA podcast, so to keep it in the in the subject, recently, and it hasn't been covered by the major news, but it came out that Jeffrey Epstein, this billionaire that suicided over the potential child molestation charges and stuff, used MMA veteran Igor Zinoviev as a bodyguard for several years.
You mean, wait a minute. So we've got the Russian Red Devil, Igor Zinoviev, who is military trained, that some would say was muscle for some of the, underhanded dealings in Russia, the people that kind of did that.
Mafia?
Oh, I would never say that.
Oh, there's no such thing as the mob.
No. So essentially what you're telling me is a guy that's been aligned with some of the most powerful people in the world, had a Russian military-trained mafia muscle as his bodyguard? Isn't that a little strange to you?
Well, look, I know nothing about these types of subjects, right? But
wait. First off, that's not true, but go ahead.
But I'm talking about high finance and, international players and stuff like that. But if you go back about 10 years ago, there was, I forget what it was called, but there was like a whole, it had something to do with pizza, if I'm not mistaken, like the name of the
yeah, I'm not even saying that name.
Theory and stuff like that. But the idea was high-level pedophilia going on.
Uh-huh.
And this is basically that. coming back up with maybe a different name and stuff, and now more clarity and stuff like that. And all the questions that are coming up with Bill Clinton and, Prince Albert and all that other stuff are really just a recycling of the same old theory and the same old conspiracy that's been out there for a long time.
Yeah. What's strange is the MMA tie to it. And, one of the things that whenever, you go to a foreign country and you're dealing with, a large mixed martial art promotion, Miguel, you and I, having traveled quite a bit, you have to assume that the people you're dealing with have some sort of, underworld connection. And, you could say, oh, that's a real broad statement. Well, not really. It's not. Not in boxing and mixed martial arts. If you look at Pride, Pride Fighting Championship, which was the largest mixed martial art organization in the entire world at one point, they did an 80,000 seat venue and sold it out. So some would say it's probably the biggest, year to date. I don't think there's ever been an attendance larger than that anywhere in the world for a mixed martial art event. Mm-hmm. But, they essentially went away after what we consider Time magazine in Japan did article after article after article just kind of showing their mafia ties, and it put that company under. It did. And if you look at everything that happened over there, whether it was fake fights, or fixed fights, guys that in their contract would say there's no steroid testing at all, please take steroids. As well as, there's a lot of stories there that we talk a lot on this podcast about things that you can't find on the internet, which tends to be our core audience. It kind of brings the people, the dorks, to the forefront. There are things that I am well aware of that have happened in Japan that I won't talk about on this podcast because they're so bizarre.
Really?
Yeah, no, I won't do it. So, Miguel, have you ever dealt with anything in regards to mafia dealings with mixed martial arts, or perceived them as mafia dealings?
Well, like you said, mafia doesn't exist, right? So,
Right.
The point is at certain points in time, it's not like, there's one big mafia boss that everyone answers to and there's an organization there or anything like that. No, but I think the strong man, the money man, the guy, the fanatic of the sport and our particular flavor of it that brings money to the sport because it's his passion and stuff like that, sometimes comes from, the underworld, so to speak. It's kind of been a tradition for, in boxing and things like that for, a long, long time. Some of them are legit, some not so legit, but they all, everyone likes to be associated with tough guys, right? So I think it strokes big egos to be associated with them, and you get that. Now with Igor, I think you have a very different pro. I think you have a guy who, I love when, somebody shoots somebody at Walmart and they say, oh, UFC fighter. And it's like the guy fought once in the UFC, It's like, I'm sure the UFC chafes at that, It's like Igor is the quintessential guy that you could call him an MMA fighter, but it's just something he did. You know what I mean? He came in there and he was good at it. He was, I'm not saying take away from his level or professionality or capabilities and stuff like that, but his skills came from, not 100% from training in the gym. He came from real life skills, and he came from, special forces in Afghanistan and stuff like that, where just a whole different way of life, for years and years there of survival is part of his makeup. And another thing that guys like that, this is the main thing, especially with an Eastern European guy, FC was paying him to be quiet. And that's it. You know what I mean? The guy, and still to this day, the guy's interview was like, I'm not saying anything. You know what I mean? It's like, I didn't see any girls. And he's like, yeah, and he slipped in an interview 4 years ago and mentioned, they're kind of young or something. And they call him on it now, and he's like, no, you got the interview wrong. He's denying everything, and that's what it is. That's what those guys do. They're going to be quiet, and therefore, in my mind, we'll never know the true depths of the depravity. You know what I mean?
No, and a guy like him, let's put it in a proper context as well. He's been here 20 years, and here, now. This is, I'm going to show you the type of encyclopedic knowledge that a guy like Miguel Arate has here.
Who?
All right, so Miguel, do you know who brought Igor over here as a fighter initially?
Yeah, John Peretti.
Look at that, dude.
Like
Nerd.
Nerd. So John Peretti, for those of you who don't know, was the original matchmaker for the UFC, and he also matchmade a couple of the.
Let me pause you for 1 second and clean up a couple of things. There was an event in L.A. where Brock Lesnar made his debut that had over 100,000 people as official sales. So that, I think, is the biggest MMA event. I think it was Inoki or Heroes, or it was a Japanese-based company that did it. But that's where Lesnar made his debut in a 1-minute fight. So that one is the biggest one. Now, in terms of Peretti replaced Art Davey sometime around UFC 14 or something around there. So he wasn't the original matchmaker.
Okay.
Peretti on his own developed a show called The Battlecade, and that ran 4 very high-quality shows in competition with the UFC, and it's from there that Peretti comes. So Peretti had his own connections pre-UFC, and the UFC brought him on basically because he was better than them.
Yeah, he was kind of famous for matchmaking that event in Canada where a lot of the fighters were getting arrested in the airport, and a lot of them got arrested that night. That's a guy I'd really like
including Zinoviev.
Including Zinoviev. So essentially,
Peretti got out of Canada. Interestingly, Peretti got out of Canada after the show. He was back home, and then flew himself back to Canada to go to jail with the rest of the guys.
Did he really?
Peretti was an all right guy.
You got to hand it to him. Mm-hmm. But I honestly, I would have took off too. I mean, the writing's on the wall. You got to go. So,
but there's that you don't leave a man behind kind of thinking.
I respect that,
and I think in the early days of MMA that does count because it wasn't even MMA at that point, but those guys had that mentality of us against the world.
So what do you know about Zinoviev? About his background?
Well, Zinoviev fought on that show, was arrested on that show, so he was the Battlecade's, top guy. He came in and one of the reasons Peretti should be recognized more as a matchmaker is Peretti put him in. His first fight was against Mario Sperry in that format in Battlecade. And Sperry was a Brazilian, also with the 200-0 type of resume and stuff like that. So it was definitely a challenge, and he won the fight on a technicality. And from there, he kind of became their star. Later on, Peretti brought him in to fight Frank Shamrock. And, Peretti's on record as saying that if he did the fight 10 times, Igor would win 8 of them.
8 out of the time.
Unfortunately, in the UFC, Frank kind of picked him up and slammed him and knocked him out and broke his clavicle. So, that was the last we saw of Igor in big-time MMA. He was definitely a Peretti guy. In Peretti's book, he credits Igor Zinoviev is having a John Peretti black belt. So they definitely trained together, and Peretti, infused or at least felt like some of his martial. He says in the book the guy was very prepared. It's not like he took it from white belt to black belt, but he gave him a black belt in Peretti's martial art.
Yeah, and going back to that Mario Sperry fight, that was probably like the first A-list Brazilian that I ever saw lose a fight. Like, that was kind of like, it showed you that people were starting to catch up and catch on to jiu-jitsu, and Igor was that guy. So when Igor went to the UFC, I was just like, man, this is the guy that's going to do it. This is going to be the first, non-Brazilian champion, that goes up against him. Yeah. So it was definitely interesting times. Miguel, what about in Russia? What have you heard about some of the mafia dealings in Russia?
Well, I mean,
it doesn't exist. But if it were to
exist, what do you think would be going on?
Yeah, no, I think again, you can find examples of, like Fedor's management and stuff like that. They weren't his original management. They kind of said, "Hey, we're the biggest guys on the block. Come here, be with Red Devil." And it made sense to Fedor in their way of thinking. You know what I mean?
And Alexander as well, who later left.
Now they're talking about Alexander coming over here to fight bare knuckle, but the reason he didn't do any MMA after a certain point is because he was Hep C positive.
Yeah, but Hep C is curable. I mean, is
it? Because at one point 10 years ago it wasn't.
No, it's definitely curable.
Marco Ruas' career. So that's what I'm not sure. And then if it's curable, but you could still blow hot for it, then, there's a lot of complications to it. But that was the original problem with it. But anyway, so back to the mafia, in Russia, yes, I've seen, I think I've given an example like this before, but I've seen a promoter tell a doctor that the fighter is going to fight anyway, even though medical clearance has been failed. And that's, something that hopefully in the United States, doesn't, in other countries, it isn't happening, in such a way. In this case, it really wasn't overly dangerous or anything like that. But I'll tell you the example. It was Zulu, the MMA fighter, the second generation fighter. Uh-huh. He was there to fight a main event. And, he fought a dozen times in Japan and nobody called him on this, but we had an ethical doctor that looked at the regulations of the Nevada State Commission and the medical exams that are requested on all fronts and says, I can't. He doesn't have any range of motion in his right foot. He has elephantitis, and it's just a fucking lump of foot. It doesn't have an ankle. I can't, he's not medically cleared to fight. And, so the promoter made the decision, and that's something
thank you,
that,
doctor. You're now excused.
It was more like, thank you, fuck you, shut up, don't say another word kind of thing. You know what I mean? Because, so we had some Western people there, such as myself, kind of like trying to maintain integrity and stuff like that. And something like that really is, horrific to have to deal with. But like I said, it was a situation where it was the main event. And again, he should never have been approved to fight any of his other professional fights for the same reason. And, then there's a risk mitigation that goes involved. It's not a good, proud feeling, but that doesn't happen in the States, and that happens where there's a strong man, a leader that you could, say is a mafia type.
Well, I will say that I was in Atlantic City for a Russian-owned organization, and the venue was empty. I think there was like a sporting event happening that night to where there wasn't a lot of people there, but at the time I was married, and my ex-wife said, there's 3 very large men with giant stacks of money that don't appear to have come from the casino, and they're buying just copious amounts of tickets to the event. And I'm like, huh? She's like, man, you got to go see it. I walk over there. These men happen to be Eastern European, and I'm not trying to, point fingers at.
Could you tell by the flatness of the back of their head?
Well, let's just say the organization began with a letter, and then there was a number right after it. And I remember going out there, going, man, these guys probably got about $300,000-$400,000 in cash on them, and they're just buying tickets and tickets. And it's not like, well, I want 200 tickets right now. Here's the cash. It's no. 2 tickets, 2 tickets, 2 tickets, 4 tickets, 6 tickets, 2 tickets. And I don't think that they were giving those tickets away for some reason. I'm not sure why. But the casino shows are probably complicated, there's, on the internet, if you look around, there's lawsuits around that money and money that was borrowed to create that. And then when it doesn't come back in tickets, you have to make it look good, I guess. So, yeah, there's a whole bunch of shenanigans that go on there. And so, that's small-time MMA, but the commissions do battle against that most of the time, and they're able to work against that, especially nowadays, you know what I mean? They do get a little bit better in policing some of that element, and that's, after all, what they're there for, right? Wow.
But, yeah, just,
Here, I'm going to give you one more example, because, Miguel, you're not being forthcoming, so I'm going to give another example. You have got a virtual library of examples, and you're not giving them. But I will give one more, just to show you, Miguel, that I'm a team player, unlike yourself. I was in Bulgaria for Max Fights, MAXFIGHTS. I was there with Wes Sims, and we were sitting in the lobby, and the promoters, man, the minute you saw me, you just held on to your wallet. You're just like, oh, my God, this is not a good scene. I mean, the minute they picked us up at the airport, Wes looked at me, and he goes, dude, this isn't good. I mean, it was at hello. We look at each other, and we're like, uh-oh, this is bad news. And they were getting walked out of the hotel. Like, one guy that we would meet, like, we'll say it like on a Tuesday, somebody in an authoritative manner come talk to him. They'd have him turn around, throw handcuffs on him. They'd walk him out. And I'd be like, wait a minute. He was in that same bus ride with us in an administrative spot from the airport, to the hotel. But, it's weird. They come over, don't worry, everything's okay. You're like, hey, man, things happen, whatever. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Mm-hmm. The next day, they'd be there for somebody else. And then I remember it got to, like, the main guy, and when they put him in handcuffs, we'll call it, like, on a Thursday, and the fight's on Saturday, he was there, like, the next morning pounding on our hotel doors. Everything is okay. Meanwhile, he's on the front page of the newspaper. And, like, me and Wes have the newspaper. We're like, yeah, can you translate this for us? We're just trying to figure out what it says about you. Mm-hmm. And the guy's like, everything's fine. We just have to delay the event one more week. Everything's okay, but we've extended your airfare. Your hotel's paid for. It's just 1 week. Don't worry about it. I'm like, I got work at home. I got a family. So, needless to say, I left Wes there, and I kept telling him, please come with me. I'll pay for your change of your ticket. We got to go. Wes didn't do it. He stayed. He was a man of his word, but I left. There was no way I was staying there after that. I mean, there was a couple other shenanigans and incidences that they pulled on us. I don't really feel like getting into it. Mm-hmm. It took years off of my life. But, whenever you go to these foreign countries, things like that absolutely happen.
Oh, yeah. I've seen it firsthand. It's nuts, man. So...
like a Spanish Armada ship in Russia, Miguel.
Yeah, well, I could tell you that the whole Bodog crew, that when we flew over there to do the reality filming of a series, so we were going to spend, I think there were probably about 40 fighters over there, 20 fights, 40 fighters, plus corners. That's 80 people, plus crew. We had a hotel on lockdown with 150 rooms taken up and stuff like that. And we all showed up, and we're getting to Russia, and I mean, you need cash, you need all kinds of stuff. So everybody literally showed up with, like, a piece of camera equipment or some type of equipment and $9,900 in cash, just under the $10,000 minimum, so nobody has to declare it, right? So we get to customs, and we're crossing it into, we've shown our passports, and we're going to pick up our bags, and there's still one more, you pick up your bags, and there's one more clearance where, you can declare if you've got anything or you don't declare, and you still got to show all your stuff. Well, the promoter comes walking through that door and is standing there, and he literally says to the recruiter, goes, come right this way, just come move through here. You don't have any drugs, do you? If you have drugs, you can't come, but everybody else just come right through here. And we cleared Russian customs that way. So
just a question, huh?
I mean, I've seen,
these guys are with me.
Yeah,
it's like you're at a club. These guys are with me. They don't got to pay the admission.
Do you have any drugs as a clear? No. All right.
Yeah.
Welcome to Russia.
Yeah.
Cool.
I love this country. Yeah, no.
I mean, it was the drug joke was him really just looking at it. It's
trying to be sincere about giving a shit. Yeah.
I think it's actually more of a flex. It's just to show how fucking powerful he is. That he's standing in customs telling you just go through with the $9,900 you got and the camera equipment and all that stuff. Everything's taken care of. Don't have to show your passports to anybody. Just go through.
If you're that,
around,
if you're that officer,
whatever, so,
if you're that officer and a guy does that, you're just like, yeah. I'm gonna let this one go.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go take my bathroom break.
Not letting the next one go, but this one, you guys.
Yeah, this whole group is gone. I'm gonna really thoroughly check everybody from here on out for the rest of my shift. Human life is just it's shocking. It's just how invaluable human life is in other parts of the world, and it doesn't dawn on you until you go there. Yeah. And we've really nerf-proof life. Like, we really have. Like, we used to have to go out and catch food, kill it, eat it, skin it. We don't have to do any of that right now. Like, people 70, 80 years ago look at us as soft. And because of that, it's just, we're not the same people. Mm-hmm. We're genetically speaking as we were 100 years ago. It's just, we're much kinder and softer. And sometimes, like, that's here in the United States, but in other countries, they still have that hardness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I notice it. I tend to see that too. They don't value the same life that we do.
No.
And that's tough. Because it scares you about traveling too. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to go over there and you're like, man, is this going to be the last?
On one of my trips to Russia, I was flying on the plane with, and sitting next to me was a Russian guy who was a scientist, and he worked for a major cell phone company and stuff. And so we talked politics, and we got drunk. We actually got cut off in the back of the plane, and we would go up and bum wine off of first class until they cut us off there. And so we had a nice discussion about politics and stuff. But one of the things that I mentioned was, that Stalin, supposedly in the purges of that era, killed 30 million people. And, his response was, but we have roads.
Well, look at Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan changed the actual,
it's a little different way of thinking, I think.
The carbon footprint, because he killed 10% of the world, Genghis Khan. Mm-hmm. There's books praising him for the security along the Silk Road and allowing everything, like, that entire area to grow. And it's like, the guy killed 10% of the world, and there's statues of him in their airport.
Mm-hmm. That's nuts, huh?
That's crazy. That's bonkers. I mean, think of just a massive...
If you look around, there's a lot of those that have statues.
Yeah, I mean, and if you think about it, think about in Eastern Europe, some of the travesties that happened there. Imagine a statue dedicated to, they had some amazing, leaps and bounds of medical when this person was committing all these atrocities. So for that reason, we put a statue up in our airport. I'm like, it's just... It's weird. Like, even Randy Turpin, the boxer. They just put a statue up of Randy Turpin. The guy tried to kill his daughter, who barely survived. Then he offed himself in jail. I mean, granted, it was a few years ago that they put it up, and he died in the 40s. Mm-hmm. But they still got a statue of Randy Turpin up.
Yeah, that's incredible, man.
So go ahead, Miguel.
Yeah, I mean, they grow up with different, it really is different stories, different lifestyle. I'll tell you, I went to Bulgaria for a non-fight related
I'll never go to that country again, ever.
And I would go in a heartbeat again, But
Not me.
But I knew people, and you kind of would have to be there with people that you know. But at any rate, one of the stories that they tell, and this is how sort of the kids are brought up, and it gives you an inkling into their mindset, right? So they were used to getting overrun by the Turks and the Mongols and stuff like that. So at some point, these guys would come through and raid and kill, and do whatever it was they do. And generations upon generations remember that. So now, at some point, what the Turks used to do is they would come through, and instead of killing everybody, they would take your kids. And instead of taking your kids and killing them or something, they would take them and train them into their army and then come back and kill you with your own people. This was one of the Turkish plans, right? So the story goes that a Bulgarian neighbor is going off to war, and he brings his only son to his neighbor and says, I need you to watch my kid. I probably won't be back, So anyway, so the guy is now raising the two kids, and the Turks show up. And the Turks say, okay, you got to give us one of these kids. We're taking them for our army. Now, in their way of thinking, I think this is different than the Western ways of thinking. The Bulgarian man gives up his own child because of his word, I guess, that you would describe it that way, because he gave his word to the other man that he would keep his kid. So in order to maintain that word, he gives up his own kid in that circumstance. Again, we don't grow up that way.
No. That's wild. Yeah, Genghis Khan, if you were taller than a trailer hitch, on a wagon, they killed you, especially the boys. So essentially, because they might come back and harm you, for revenge. They would decimate a village strategically, leave, and then they would send people back just for the survivors. They're just trying to figure out what the hell just happened here, and they would kill the survivors just in case, because they were going from city to city, that the survivors wouldn't just pack up with other survivors and finally build an army and catch them from behind. Mm-hmm. Dude, Genghis Khan, some of his strategies are still used in tank warfare today. He was that brilliant, and it was before written history. It was all verbal. Yeah, it was all. It's Dan Carlin, Hardcore History. He's got a 6 or 7 part. Dude, it's brilliant.
I listened to 2 or 3 of them now.
It's one of the most brilliant things I have ever listened to in my entire life. It literally changed the way I view the world.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, The Wrath of Khan is what it's called. I think they're $1 an episode. There's 6 episodes. You'd be stupid not to listen to it. So, Miguel, thank you for sharing. Any other thing about Igor Zinoviev that anybody might want to know that you can think of off the top of your head?
Like I said, the connection to Epstein is interesting. I don't think he's a huge player. He was just a driver and bodyguard for him and stuff. But definitely he was in the Florida area and he was with him for many years. And all I can say is he definitely knows more than he's saying.
Well, he said nothing. That's for sure. You know what I'll say? I bet you he's in Russia right now. There's no way I'm sticking around here after that mess that's going on. There's no way. My prediction, if I were to go to betdsi.com and put in the promo code Fighters Corner, I would look for parlay bets. Yeah, because you double your money once you put in up to $500. I would bet on the parlay that Igor is back in St. Petersburg right now, probably with
not Florida, St. Petersburg, Russia.
You don't think he's with the American top team out in Florida?
I don't mean to jump in, Mike, but you mean a prop bet?
Oh, my fault, dude. I apologize, Miguel. Yes, the prop bets. You can see how versed I am at gambling.
Yeah, because they actually wouldn't let you take that prop bet in a parlay, which is why I wanted to mention it for the people out there. So just FYI.
Thank you. I'm sure it's very important.
That's why
we got Miguel.
That's why we got
Miguel. Love you, brother. Miguel, thank you, man.
Love you guys, too. And God bless Igor. May he stay safe.